You're listening to a Pop House Network podcast for developers by developers. Welcome to Java OffHeap episode 56, everyone. Hey there, my name is Freddie Gime. I'm here, one of the co-hosts of the Java OffHeap. I'm a principal engineer at Expedia, speaker, author, Java champion, Seattle Java user group, co-organizer. And I'm here with my usual suspects.
Hey, everybody. Bob Paulin, independent consultant, Apache Software Foundation member, Java champion, and CJUG board chair.
Hey, everyone. Josh Juno, application developer on the Jakarta EE side specifically. I do a lot of database administration, system analyst, and I do lots of authoring and some speaking. And member of the JCP, Jakarta EE Guardians, Java Champions.
Michael Manella, member of the Spring Engineering team, author, speaker, Java Champion, curmudgeon at large.
And before we dive in, I wanted to thank our sponsors. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring and analytics platform that integrates with over 400 technologies, including AWS services, Docker, and Kubernetes. Datadog's platform brings together metrics, traces, and logs in one place, so you can get full visibility into your environment and improve your application performance. With machine learning-based alerts, customizable dashboards, and distributed tracing, Datadog makes it easy to unify disparate data sources so you can troubleshoot faster. Start your free Datadog trial today. Listeners of this podcast will receive a free t-shirt once you install the agent and create one dashboard. Visit javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. Again, that URL is javaoffheap.com/Datadog. And we thank them for keeping our, mics on and recording and giving you now newfangled video. So you can see our radio faces all day long. All right. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. So let's see. Where do we start? There's tons to discuss and not enough time to go for it.
The first one post-election, too, so...
Yeah,
lots going on in the world.
Kind of post-election. Kind of.
The polls are closed. Let's just go there.
Yeah. So we're recording this episode a couple of days after, November 5th.
It could still be going by the time we record next time.
Yeah, maybe by the time it's released and edited, it'll be over. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Oh, Lord.
So speaking of other events.
Yeah, so let's talk about tech first.
Yeah, let's talk about some tech events. So, DevNexus. DevNexus is happening, coming up. It's a favorite of us.
Yes.
or yesterday. So February 17th, they're doing a virtual one this year. So it's a one-day virtual event. I don't believe any of us are speaking, but we're going to be there. The group. We're still figuring out what that's going to look like in the virtual situation, but we are going to be doing some type of episode there. So be sure to check out DevNexus. Always an excellent conference, and check us out when we're there.
Yep, and I'm expecting it's probably going to be a lot like this. So I mean, we just did JConf in Chicago. So we talked about, I think, that last episode that it was coming up. We did it, and it was really interesting because they did all of the talks pre-recorded, but then afterwards they did meeting rooms with the speaker that were over Zoom. So there was real-time interaction after the talk was already done, and there was chat going during the actual presentation. So JConf was put on by the same folks that do DevNexus, so would expect probably something very similar to that. So hopefully...
that's what I've heard.
Yep. Hopefully you'll be seeing us over a Zoom chat, and maybe we'll have a little bit of an audience, and it'll just be virtual. So I
was just thinking of twitching us playing Among Us or something like that. That's
the question, Freddie, for you though. Is the null pointers going to be performing over Twitch? Then is that what you're going to be doing?
I don't know. Maybe we should ask for a country. Even though like it's crazy. That's one thing that we haven't solved yet. Like for a musician, that 100 milliseconds latency kills them. Like
it's funny you mentioned that. I know a guy who's working on a startup right now for assembling music ensembles via recordings like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can if you're interested in finding.
All right.
Hook
me up, man. Hook me up.
They're targeting specifically the education space, but I could definitely hook you up.
It's a sort of educational. You learn something. You learn an opinion. Oh my gosh. No, but yeah, so DevNext is a favorite of us. And we'll have some kind of fun trivia or something going on. So stay tuned for that.
Good guess.
Yeah. Then the next one is Java Champions Conference, right?
Yep. J Champions Conference, actually. And it is going to be champion speakers. This will also be an online conference. It's happening on January 13th, 14th, 18th, and 19th. So it's a little bit split up, but it's 4 days worth of conference. There's 2 sessions in the morning, 2 sessions in the afternoon, and 2 sessions in the evening. So each day. So there will be 24 sessions in total. Should be a good time. So go online and register for that one. jchampionsconf.com.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a fun one because there's a lot of knowledge in those speakers. So,
yes, indeed, we've got lots of good submissions already for that conference, and it's going to be a good one.
All right.
So the next one I put in there, the JDK 16 JEPs are rolling in, just because it's now that we're on to JDK 15 is in production. We got to move on to 16, and we're seeing these things rolling in pretty quick. I just looked at the page today, and it's different, than it was yesterday. It seems like it's updating every day. Take a look now. There's quite a number of JEPs. I think last time we recorded, there was only 1 or 2 targeted towards JDK 16. So figure we may want to talk about that.
They're moving to GitHub.
Yeah,
wow.
I like how they have 2, migrating Mercurial to Git and then migrating to separate JEPs.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
One step at a time.
I want to know what the 8 in between there were.
Yeah.
It's 357 and 369. So they obviously weren't filed.
Undo, redo.
I mean, the fun one that I see in here, and Freddie, I know we just did that panel with Stuart Marks, is it looks like the official records is in there. Does not say preview on records in JDK 16. So
no, that's and it's interesting because it seems like so mundane when you look at records, you're like, oh, this little feature looks kind of cool. But once you start seeing sort of like the hooks that they're trying to put in and sort of like the pattern matching that they're putting in, it's like, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff that you can actually do that they're preparing for. So that's going to be very, very fun for the language.
Yeah, I kind of. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Josh, please.
I just was going to say I'm kind of interested in seeing the pattern matching of the instance of. That's lots of applications use instance of it, so that pattern matching is going to be nice to have.
Yes. No, it's so fun. Because that is the one that essentially is if object instance of string s or s.length more than 5. So like you don't have to do the little cast thing that you always do, or all this stuff. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. So 16 is the that'll be the last short-term release, isn't it? No, or just still a couple more?
Yeah, because I think 17 is the next LTS. Yeah.
Wow.
This is like the last button everything up because I mean there has been gravity towards those LTSs. I've seen it in companies and everything. So everybody is either on 8 or 11.
Yep.
I believe,
but still, the lion's share is still 8.
Oh, yeah.
100% agree, but you don't see anybody hanging out on 9 or 10. It's
I think that the 17 will be the one that people finally move for.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is how painful it'll be, like going from 8 to because
most people will be
going from 8. Right?
So when we talked to Stuart, I mean, he had mentioned like once you get to 11, the pain is kind of over
once you get to 11.
Once you get to 11.
Yeah,
but it's
you can
not,
do that anytime now.
If you're going from 8 to 17, you're going through 11. So I mean, there's pain in that. But like if you're already on 11, going from 11 to 17, it sounds like it's going to be painless,
or at least less painful.
So then we have JDK 16 coming out in March 2021, and then I assume that would leave JDK 17, the next LTS, in September. Is that correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the interesting part will be is that I expect that a lot of the open source, because like the tail end of when you're doing the upgrades is not necessarily you yourself getting to 11 or 17, is the tooling and the frameworks that you bring in that have to be at least compatible to what you're bringing, right? So it'll be interesting to see how many sort of like library maintainers and framework maintainers are saying like, ooh, I haven't looked at my stuff. It worked on 11. 17, I need to like see, does it work with 14, 15, 16, and 17? And then trying to do the upgrade. So
I know Spring Framework, we've already announced 5.3 is the last minor version. So you have to assume, although we've made no announcements, and to my knowledge, there's no concrete internal thing yet. You have to assume, just based on historical precedent, that next year there would be a Spring Framework 6.
Yes,
that would be based on Java 17. Again, I got no insider baseball on this one. That being said, I think that would be one of the things that kind of drags people along. I know Spring has usually done a pretty good job of offering language features when the language comes out. So like we've got no problem supporting whatever the minor is as we go. I know I'm personally hoping for that because it'd be nice. Like everything on Framework 5 which is basically the entire portfolio right now. That's all based on Java 8. So like internally, we haven't, we can't use 11. Like we know we have to work well with 11 and above, but we can't use any of that stuff. We're still stuck on those features that were like our cool stuff is streams. That's the last cool thing we got in our code base.
Well, again, with what we know is targeted for 16 and in between 16 and 8, what would you say is the feature Spring Team is most excited about between 8 and what's on the docket right now?
Oh, definitely Jigsaw. Trolling.
I don't think that's it. Where's the mute button?
Yeah, there's no.
It works in debates. It could work here.
No, I won't debate like that.
So I can't speak for the framework themselves. I know Jürgen did a state of the state at Spring 1 and to talk about some of that stuff. I know records is something that they've gotten support across the framework. So it's at Spring Framework, it's Spring Data, it's Spring Batches got record support in the release we just did. I'm trying to think of some other interesting things that from the JDK came out. We have support for all the major language features. I'm just trying to blank on what some of them would be.
It feels like a lot of them have been. So you've got. Is any of the pattern matching stuff in? I know there's a lot of stuff still held out. I thought they added some of the pattern matching stuff too.
It's interesting because what
about VAR? Let's throw that in. I guess there's not really a Spring thing.
It's not a Spring angle thing. But it works. It's Java, right? That's the thing is a lot of the language features I'm thinking of, VAR and whatnot are all just like language features. Yep, they work. Like there's nothing.
No,
there's no spring angle on it now.
Yeah.
When is Loom going to be in, for example?
So I do know the Reactor team has been doing some exploration there. I don't know the status of it, but I do know that they have been looking both Reactor, as well as I think some of the guys that are interested in Kotlin, with the coroutines over there. We've all been exploring that space. I don't know the updates on it,
because like and that's what I'm thinking. Like even the things like pattern matching, for instance, stuff. It's not necessarily that is nicer to type in, but I think that there are actual like performance advantages if you have to do it a lot. So I think that's like, if I were looking for that angle, that's probably where I think it starts getting exciting is like same with records, right? Like records does give you a performance edge in certain things because of the way that things are immutable, but I don't know if you can transform things on records without breaking things. So that's another one. It's like almost have to be internal details.
Yeah, I know for like the JDBC template support for records and that kind of thing. It's all been like complete new stuff. We couldn't reuse a lot of the stuff we had for it.
No,
Patch had the same thing.
And I'm gonna do a very quick parenthesis on something fun that I discovered on Spring when I needed to there was a puzzle for me and I never understood why. But one of the things that I was always curious about is like, you know how there's the outer wire and there's constructor outer wires, which I definitely understand, but there's also like outer wires and properties. And one of the things that which makes them non-final because you're wired to them after the constructor has been called. And I was always wondering, why is this thread safe? Like it never dawned on me. Like I was doing some exploration and Michael knows this because I was asking him questions about bean startup times. And then I realized that all the startup bean creation is on the same thread and sequential.
Yeah. Now that I don't believe that's still the case, or they're
exploring,
or they're either exploring or it's a new feature. One of the two. That the ability to do that multi-threaded to speed it up. But historically, it's all been a single. The creation of the container has always been single threaded.
So if you have
for that reason.
And if you have a bean that takes a long time to construct on the constructor, like if you don't defer the work or stuff like that, then that will be a penalty for the whole application to start. And I was like, there was a poorly constructed constructor that I found out and then trying to figure out how to like reassemble it. But it was like one of the mysteries of Spring that is like, how is this thread safe? And then it took a while, like it took years to like, oh, same thread. Makes sense. At least it makes me feel safer because if I was always panicking and I always do like outer wires on constructors just because of that. But in retrospect, when Spring decides to do things multi-threaded, that's actually the best way to. If a bean doesn't have any other sort of like properties that are set outer wire, that the only time that the bean needs injections is on the constructor, that makes it thread safe.
Yeah, I mean, we recommend using constructor injection for the most part, anyways.
Yep.
These days, I mean,
probably because
property injection is an artifact of XML configuration more than anything these days. So, yeah.
Please don't use that. We're moving on.
And Michael, speaking of things that may be in use with Spring, how about the HTTP client API? Have you been leveraging that at all? That came around in JDK 11, I believe.
Good question. I believe we've got support for it. I don't know anything about the details, though.
Yeah.
Oh, the 2.x support?
Being the batch guy, the web client is probably
far away.
That's real time.
and not my department.
Web crap. Oh, that's cute. You want to deal with one record at a time. That's cute.
Well, I mean, so the default, like if you're using like REST template and thing in Spring is you're usually using one of the Apache HTTP components, right? Like, so, I mean, you're not using the default JDK, JDK implementation. So, I mean, I think there's been ways to switch to it, if I remember, but
that sounds right. I just don't know the details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So, just closing down, 16 is on the horizon. So take a look. There's some things that, we finally get to see the pull requests. We sort of see them right now, but I guess they really want to move the whole process to GitHub. So we get to see more.
That'll be
kind of fun. All right. Next one.
So I mentioned the next one just because the next release of Jakarta EE is due out soon now. It's going to be coming out here in November, and it's Jakarta EE 9. So something that's interesting is, you'd like to maybe use Jakarta EE 9, but how can you use it if you don't have any containers that work with it? So Pyara is releasing, and they have a early access release actually of a Jakarta EE 9 container. This is not really recommended to use in production at this time, but certainly for testing. It does use the Eclipse transformer behind the scenes to kind of transform the code into the proper namespace, because now with Jakarta EE 9, that's the big change. You have to use the Jakarta namespace rather than the Java X namespace. So I actually wrote an application using Jakarta EE 9 and the Jakarta namespaces, and deployed it to this latest Pyara release, and it worked. It worked well.
And it's in production, right?
Not in production. Not in production.
Do as I say, not as I do.
But yeah, so I just wanted to mention this. This is, stepping stone. We're on the way to getting more containers that are going to work with Jakarta EE 9. And to be honest with you, I don't really see too many people going to Jakarta EE 9. I really think people are going to go to Jakarta EE 10, because that's where you get your bang for your buck. You're going to get some new features in 10. Jakarta EE 9 is more or less a namespace change and a couple of small
what is it with releases that end up in 9, right? Like,
yeah.
You don't upgrade to JDK to Java 9. Like, you hated upgrading to Java 9. You wanted to get to
pain,
it. Yeah.
Right?
So
yeah. Yeah, so this Jakarta EE 9 release should be coming up soon, and there should be at least 1 or 2 containers you can go to if you're interested in moving that way. If not, I recommend it as a great stepping stone on your way to 10. Certainly migrate to 9 to test your code, and then get everything working there so you're ready to go to 10.
Do you know even a rough timeline for 10?
No, I don't. And to be honest with you, pandemic, whatever it may be, I've just been a little bit behind on some of the news and things like that with respect to Jakarta EE. I haven't been in as much as in the past.
Slacker.
So they may have put out some timelines for 10, but I suspect it's going to be late spring, early summer of 2021.
So you are expecting that it will be an aggressive timeline compared to the historic, 3 years or whatever in between.
Yes.
3 to 5 years, whatever in between. Okay.
Yeah, indeed.
That's what I thought they were hoping for, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, this one's taken a little longer. Not only because the namespace is obviously takes a while, to migrate, but also there were some legal things with the specification documents, because that's the other thing that's part of 9. All the actual specification documents are going to be transferred in there. They're fully released. So
yeah, there's some technical things to make that transition easier, right, Josh? I think that leads us into our next topic on there.
Exactly. So as I had mentioned, the Pyara release, and excuse me if I'm not saying the number, I think it's 5.2020.2 possibly. That could be wrong. But this release uses Eclipse Transformer behind the scenes. Now what this does is it is a code translator that basically will automatically detect that a package is using Java X, and it will translate it over to the Jakarta namespace. So this will allow you to, it allows containers such as Pyara to really still use all of their old, libraries and all of the old jars, but they're just translating the bits kind of behind the scenes to make everything work correctly.
Yeah, that sounds like a dangerous sword.
I was just reading the description. This project can mutate individual class files and thus could be used in a class loader to dynamically rename type references at runtime while classes are being loaded. I wonder if this uses the same mechanisms that PowerMac PowerMock used to use, because PowerMock to allow you to mock static methods, it basically allowed you to manipulate the class loader. So you could say, instead of class name A equals these bits, class name A really means these bits. That mapping, that's how PowerMock worked. I wonder if it uses a similar.
But what you're saying is I can drop my old JBoss 3 web war file in these containers and it'll just work, right?
In production.
Yeah.
Oh Lord!
Good.
No,
I can tell all my clients they don't have to upgrade. It's perfect.
So I don't need you, right?
No, they still need me.
Yeah, and from what I'm understanding, the way that this is helping Pyara here is that I can use Jakarta EE9 in my application. So I can code to Jakarta X, or excuse me, it's the Jakarta namespace, not Jakarta X. And the Pyara jars are still in the Java X namespace. So they're still using some of the old jar files, but this code is translating so that everything kind of works together.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I don't know what they're using. I'm actually looking at the PUM file and trying to see if I see anything that is evident, but it's actually more hidden than I thought. Like I thought they would use byte body or something like that, which is bytecode manipulators on load, or same trick that PowerMock used. So makes me wonder.
Well, it looks like we're still going with Eclipse. So we've got with Transformer, and then we've got Microprofile 4.0. Does that mean they have like the working group's official then?
That's right.
They're doing releases.
Yeah. This is the first release under the Microprofile working group model and Microprofile specification process. So
more money for Eclipse.
No, the question is this one is always like, right? Like, because there used to be, weren't they like Jakarta EE profiles too, right? Like there was the concept of having like the mini, micro, big, and at the same time there was this microprofile which is supposed to move faster than the Jakarta EE spec. So now if I hear it right, Jakarta EE now to be aggressive on the releases.
Well, they also have different goals, if you will. So I know when we talked to Mike Milkovich, like probably over a year ago now, one of the things he talked about was that he felt, in Jakarta, creating a new profile should be easy. Like you should be able to, creating a new aggregation of various specs should be something that's super easy, no brainer. Like it's
pick and choose.
Exactly. Yeah, it should be really easy. But Microprofile is a little different in that it has different priorities. Specifically, they've been focusing on that cloud native experience for Java. Now, they've got their own hands full with regards to how successful they're being and whatnot. I don't know of a lot of adoption, for example, with Microprofile. I know they've some of these specs are relatively new. So the maturity of them probably isn't at the level you'd find in other options in the ecosystem. But yeah, it's
yeah. No,
I mean, the fairly interesting thing I think of just the working group becoming official is that they have kind of declared some independence from the Jakarta project, because there was a lot of churn to whether that was going to get pulled in, whether it was going to stay independent. And it seems like by forming the working group and actually cutting a release, this model is going to be the way going forward. So, time will tell if these specs mature more and the adoption increases. But from an Eclipse standpoint, it does seem like they have drawn a line in the sand between Jakarta EE and Microprofile, at least for the foreseeable future.
I mean, unless I'm mistaken, the only thing that would even be close to any type of overlap, just looking at the specs involved, would be the REST client.
right?
JPA, isn't JPA and also in Microprofile? No,
not. I mean, the latest release. I'm looking at the.
Maybe they haven't updated
here.
JPA. I mean, these are all the new
4,
ones, right?
They've got fault tolerance, metrics, health, config, REST client, Open API.
Yeah, you can see the cloud
back.
did it. Yeah,
totally.
Open tracing in GraphQL.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of overlap, but the main idea here is to keep Microprofile separate from Jakarta EE so it can evolve separately and much quicker, because Jakarta EE is really going to be a standard. That's the main goal behind Jakarta EE.
Right.
Although it's Microprofile also supposed to be a standard?
It is a standard. Yes, correct. It is a standard. But let me take a step back. It's a standard. It's supposed to be evolving a little more rapidly than, it's not supposed to have to, we used to have the concept of the umbrella with Java EE, and I think we will still have that with Jakarta EE. So we're probably not going to be seeing.
But doesn't Microprofile have its own umbrella? Like we're the whole reason we're talking about it is because Microprofile did a release, not Microprofile config did a release. So there's still an umbrella involved here.
That's very true. However, how often did we see any Java EE developers, starting to use other packages that have moved forward without a Java EE release?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've said this before that the Eclipse umbrella is like the super dome of umbrellas, right? It's a little big. It's
umbrella of umbrellas.
Exactly. It's too big and bloated, so it's which is one of its problems. Whereas Microprofile is a lot tighter, a lot easier, and I get that you can move faster and be more nimble that way.
But I mean, isn't like for whatever reason, I always think of Jakarta EE, good or bad, right? Like servlet, like servlet servers, right? Like there's application servers that support this particular Jakarta EE version, right? Like whatever it is, 8 or 9, and there's this concept of your jar, your war, and there's definitely standards that's sort of like how most people handicap or like use it. It's like if I support this version of EE, that means that I'm going to be using all these things. But for Microprofile, I feel that there is no like a Microprofile server. It's just a collection of standards that you are supposed to, that if you say that you're Microprofile 4.0 compatible, that means that you're using these standards. That's it.
Right. Yes. That's. I agree with that. You could see like Glassfish, for instance. Glassfish 6 is going to be for.
It's a container, right?
Yeah, it's a container, and it's going to be for Jakarta EE, right, for the umbrella. And you can be Microprofile 4.0 compatible, but that would just mean that you will work with these different separate releases of Microprofile, or these different.
But a lot of the application servers have a way to skinny down. Like if you look at Tommy EE, Apache Tommy EE, they have a Microprofile server where you can just download Tommy EE with Microprofile and not everything else that would be Jakarta. So I mean that's kind of the strategy. It's really the modularization of the Java EE project so that you can get a Java EE. It's not Java EE, right? It's a Microprofile server.
Point,
it's a web application server with Microprofile specs only.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, it couldn't be Microprofile specs only, right? Because I guess I don't know what specs are.
Right? Couldn't it?
Well, so Microprofile is.
You'd have to have servlet. I don't know if that.
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm getting. Like servlet isn't in there. Like there's transactions aren't in there. Like there's a list of other ones that you'd need.
Well, transactions I don't think is part of Microprofile. So I misspoke when I said JPA, but I would not expect to see transactions in a Microprofile build of a Apache Tommy.
Right. But what about servlet? What do you expect?
Servlet, I of course would. I mean, you can't have Java EE with. It's not. But I mean, you're gonna.
That's kind of my point. Is like so. What is a Microprofile server? Right? It's these specs that are in Microprofile, but what else?
Well, you have to have. you don't necessarily have to have a servlet to create a microprofile application. You can create a jar file that's just a web service, right, and deploy it to a container.
What's the HTTP server for it then? Is it reactive? Is reactive support in Microprofile?
Yeah, I mean, with Tommy, you're definitely working off of a servlet container, right?
Right.
I mean, you do have that basic functionality. Now, I mean, whether you're saying, well, it's a Java application server, you got to have a servlet if you're building to a Java EE standard with servlets and filters and some of the, I mean, those are fundamental building blocks of just handling these requests, right? That they're not in the profile. I guess I'm trying to think of, we're still on what server? We're still on servlet 3x, right? I mean, servlet is 4. Is it 4 now? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, we haven't evolved the servlet spec in some time. That'd be an Ed Burns question the last time we really evolved that, but that doesn't change very much. That hasn't gotten to the magic 9 number.
What's the HTTP 2 stuff is the big
sure,
the last one.
Yeah.
So what we're not seeing is like we see the Microprofile 4.0 modules, but there might be modules that were already essentially from 3.
Yeah, but if you include servlet, I mean, I guess my question would be what else is missing? I mean, servlet I think is just a basic building block. So I guess it's almost like one of those like
you need to have like everything else is
listing,
for it. Yeah.
Breathing as a requirement on or what is it, Pavlov's function or level of hierarchy of needs, right?
Is servlet needed? I mean, looking at the things that are
Maslow,
here,
that's right.
Config, fault tolerance, health, metrics.
You need to have a REST endpoint.
Well, yeah,
but those are all listed.
I could build a cloud native batch application with most of these and not give a darn about servlets.
Really, with Open API and Open Tracing? Open Tracing almost requires
the trace
a call, right?
Well, a health check has to have something to open up a socket endpoint, right? to connect to. Now, I could put a Netty connector in front of it, sure.
Netty or JMX?
Sure, I could do that. And maybe that's why they don't list it. Maybe that's, you need some sort of connection framework, but they're not going to be opinionated on that. If I use Netty, I can still have a microprofile application.
Yeah, but
maybe that's the rationale. Maybe we should have somebody from Microprofile on to talk specifically about this.
We might know one or two people.
we may.
I would be more than happy to come and talk.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I guess that's the question, though. So, I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but I think it may be that they're not opinionated on that it has to be servlet. Maybe. And that's just happens to be what Tommy uses.
Yeah, we should probably mention that real quick is that there is going to be a CJUG microprofile session in the beginning of December. So if you're interested in learning about it.
So we're all going to attend that. That's our homework now.
Come harass them with all of Michael's questions.
Yes. Because I was almost certain that Open Tracing needed HTTP, but maybe
it's one of the Tommy Tribe guys. Is it Caesar
or Hernandez?
Caesar, yeah, good old Caesar.
Okay. Oh, nice. Oh, we'll have him anytime. All right. Next one. OSG Alliance to Eclipse.
Yes, we just keep talking about Eclipse, don't we?
The Eclipse working group money train keeps on moving.
Yeah, no, so I mean the statement here from the OSGi Alliance, which used to be the specification body for OSGi, was I mean, it's basically a consolidation. They looked at the Eclipse Foundation, they looked what they were doing and saw that a lot of kind of their administrative functions fell under things that were being done in working groups, and having a separate foundation just no longer made sense for them. So they ended up moving to Eclipse. They're forming a working group for OSGi. I mean, those things. So the spec process and seeing Eclipse already has an established spec process. It's really, Eclipse is becoming a magnet for pretty much any specification in the Java space that exists right now.
It's literally what they talked about in the membership call. Was it this week? Last week? I mean, they talked about how they have specific strategic areas of focus: cloud native Java, IoT and edge, automotive, tools. Those are the ones that they already have established areas, but they also are interested in AI, open cloud, open hardware. They just onboarded some hardware specs, space, smart cities, private and cybersecurity, smart grids, government.
Wow!
And they flat out said like we're interested in it. We're community driven, right? So if you're interested, we're interested. So I throw the joke around about the working group gravy train keeps chugging along because for the Eclipse Foundation, it's been a lucrative opportunity for them. Over in the last year, their revenue is up to 18%, mainly due to working group fees.
Because it's not free to create a working group and maintain it.
It's not. No. Or be a part of it, because you have to be a member of the Eclipse Foundation in order to be to participate in it. So you've got membership fees on top of working group fees. So and don't get me wrong, the Eclipse Foundation does a great job doing what they do and providing governance and legal cover, and they have tons of things that they do really well. It's just been a lucrative opportunity for them really ever since they flipped the Jakarta bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like they have figured out a set of rules that are working for specification organizations. Because before this, it seems like there was a lot more out there and a lot of people doing the same thing, or at least coming up with their own process. And it seems like in moving to Eclipse, a lot of these specification processes are looking forward to adopting things that Eclipse is doing, and Eclipse is happy to see the sponsors that are sponsoring these organizations coming with them in order to keep, essentially the working groups functional. To them, it's less overhead. I mean, so it's probably a win-win for OSGi's case.
No, and it's interesting because the way I see it is right. A standards body group, it's kind of funny. You want that to be big, or at least that it gets impression that it's like saying, somebody who has a standard on the IEEE versus somebody who has a standard on nowhere, Indiana, like they create their own thing, right? So there is definitely almost like a brand. The Eclipse brand is a great brand for this type of like work. They've proven themselves that they can run working groups. They've proven that they're big enough that that it doesn't necessarily mean it, but by transition, you think like Eclipse Foundation is going to be there forever. Doesn't necessarily mean that your working group or whatever you're consuming from them is going to be there forever, but it does feel that is sort of like the play that they're doing. Look, we're big enough. We can, we can support you that way. It's going to be interesting because I'm thinking is it going to be that there's either going to be the ASF and the Eclipse Foundation, and those are going to be like the big titans of the.
Well, you got to remember the ASF is not really dealing in specifications. I think what we're really seeing here is the Eclipse Foundation kind of rallying around specific types of projects that involve specifications, which are usually large enterprise level projects. So that's attracting big companies, big sponsors. To Michael's point about the gravy train keeping coming there. When you work with big companies, they pay their bills. It's one of the good reasons to do that.
The Eclipse Foundation also has the rep, right? I mean,
they earned that.
Exactly. One of the knocks that you hear against the JCP, for example, is the fact that they have been a very corporate,
driven
run. It's much more friendly to the corporate side of the world as opposed to the open source model that most developers are more comfortable with. And so if you're looking to be more developer friendly, the Eclipse Foundation feels like a more friendly place to land.
I guess, yeah. I think that corporations still have a big footing even on the Eclipse Foundation. But yeah, if you're making that comparison from JCP to Eclipse Foundation, I'll tend to agree. Eclipse Foundation will be.
I see it differently because I still feel Eclipse is still very much pay to play with the working groups. They're companies, but unlike JCP, it is a truly vendor neutral ground.
Yes, there's
the
a
vendors,
Oracle.
Whether I'm Google, whether I'm IBM, whether I'm Microsoft, there's not like the JCP where it's like, well, Oracle is still like Oracle's still funding it.
Even beyond that, just the governance model of the way Eclipse runs these working groups is fundamentally different. On the JCP, you have a spec lead who owns the IP. Like there's like they get to call the shots, and it's a company. It's not a person. And like where the Eclipse Foundation, it's the open source model. You've got committers, and you work together as a team to do like. It's a completely different model, and because of that, it's much more developer friendly. Like, I don't get me wrong, I completely agree with you, Bob, that it is pay to play. Mike has even said that. Like, the way the spec process works because of the legal transition of IP, it has to be to some degree. Like, there's just, and I get that. I get that. Yeah, with all the legalities and the lawyers involved, it has to be, and I get that. But the running of the project, the day-to-day operations of the projects are left to the people. They're left to the community in the Eclipse Foundation. They're left to a company under the JCP.
Yep.
Fundamentally, that's the way
change is the big one.
Yes.
I want to jump in real quick because I may be mistaken here, so do not edit this out. I am.
That's a record, man. That's it. We're going to take this to the bank.
Foundation. I think the Eclipse Foundation is modified the working group model so that user group members can be committers without a fee.
Yeah,
so you can play as a committer.
The Eclipse Foundation, they have. So I would caution that. Full disclosure, I don't know for the details, but I would caution that only because I know at the Eclipse Foundation, working groups set their own fees. So my only question is, does that transfer to all the working groups?
Okay, yeah.
Or is it just, I know what you're talking about, the Jakarta one, or the Microprofile one, they've kind of flipped that bit, and I don't know if that's the case for all of them.
Got it. So it may not be a blanket.
Yeah, it's just an I don't know. It very well may be. I just don't know.
Okay, yep.
Now, that does bring an interesting question, like, Bob, has the Apache Software Foundation have ever thought about getting into the sort of like standardization type of work? It probably crossed their minds, right?
Yeah, no, I think when there were discussions about, whether the specs for Java EE were going to Eclipse, the Apache Software Foundation was in that conversation. I think, again, with the model being a little bit different at Apache, where it's the developers, like, you don't have corporate contributions to Apache. All of the contributions from Apache are from individuals. So even if I work for Google and I'm contributing code as me. Google is not a PMC on the project. So if I leave Google, I don't get kicked off my project that I'm committing to through Apache, and then Google can replace me with whoever takes my role. I am in this as an individual. Now, the spec process, I think it's interesting because there is some type of IP ownership. And in the Eclipse model, Eclipse still is more the owner of the IP, right? Or does it actually get assigned to somebody?
I think Eclipse.
I think it goes to Eclipse. So it's a holding company for the IP. They have access to the lawyers. As far as Apache's access, I mean, they do have engagements with legal entities, but I don't know if they're as frequent as because we're not making projects pay to be at Apache. Once you're an Apache project, there's no fee that's required of that project to stay an Apache project. You just have to remain active to the board's pleasure, that you don't get put in the attic because you don't have contributions. So it's really based upon contributions, not on money. So there's no scalability that if a project's getting started and we have all of these legal fees that need to be looked at and we need approvals, the Apache model is not set up to fund projects in that way. Hey, we'll give you a build server on Jenkins, and we'll give you a place to put your code. We'll give you a process. We'll give you mentors. That's what Apache does. That may not be the best. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that it's actually really been tried as a specification model. And I think Java EE wanted to go somewhere where, they thought it fit more of, Eclipse is a lot closer to what the JCP was than
True.
Apache is.
Yeah.
It's definitely different, but it was a lot shorter leap, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see them getting involved. The closest thing you'll see is projects that are almost pseudo specifications. For I'm trying to think.
De facto standards.
De facto standards by the popularity of the project. At the ASF, that's about as close as you get to actual. Like Groovy is a language, right? It's at the ASF. There's obviously rules and things around Groovy that are specified in the syntax and everything like that. That's probably the closest thing you have to a spec process at Apache.
I see. So essentially is to start catering to a type of organization where you can actually write specs. The model may have to change drastically of how it is done, or at least it hasn't been tried the way that you folks are just contributing to your projects right now. So interesting.
This is probably a stupid question. I apologize. Is Tomcat still the reference impl for servlet?
Good question.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I was just curious.
That would be an Eclipse
there's
question,
a bit of a relation,
right?
Because if they are still, there's a bit of a relationship there.
Sure.
Specs is held by, quite frankly, an organization with probably more lawyers than the Apache Software Foundation has.
Mm-hmm.
And then the actual code and the working on that kind of stuff is held under Apache. It's an interesting relationship, is all I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, that's common. But you saw that type of relationship even with the JCP. There was a batch implementation at Apache. There is Apache implementation.
It wasn't the reference though.
No.
Apache
definitely not for batch. Definitely not for batch. But there are several Java EE or even just Java specification processes that have been implemented at Apache. As far as it being reference implementation, I'd have to look a lot closer to know if there's if there's any other ones other than a Tomcat. We're making the assumption it is.
Right. I know it was. I just don't know if it still is.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next story, and then we'll see how Eclipse and ASF looks in 5 years from now. That's going to be an interesting end of the year episode. The next one is backdoor encryption access. So
this one was probably me. There is 6 countries that were demanding or beginning to bang the government needs backdoor access to encryption drum. They were the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, India, and Japan. And over the past month, the U.S. Department of Justice signed on to the statement saying the same thing, warning of the dangers of encryption, and just how because they can't spy on you, it's all horrible. Forgetting the fact that if there is a key, everybody can have that key at some point.
It's crazy, right?
Those that sign on to this kind of thing just fundamentally don't understand how this works.
No, I guess the problem is is there a way to protect the decryption key? Even if you decided to this was a good idea, that kind of secret just spilling out and then it's kind of like makes encryption worthless once you get the backdoor key. I don't know. I remember remember back in the day of DVDs when there were DVD rippers. And
I have a T-shirt around here somewhere. I don't have it handy.
Oh, do you have the X number?
DSS, yes.
Oh, that is
the front is a
fun.
Python script that will do the decryption, and the back is the law that it technically breaks.
Oh, that is
I bought
funny.
it in college during that whole heyday of that stuff. I wish I had it handy. I don't though.
Yeah, well, we can see where Michael likes to be. He likes to wear the black hats. Well, so to put the story into context, so what happened was, in the way that encryption and the DVD encryption works is like it's a very common encryption algorithm that has a particular master key, and the interesting part is that technically it run into an edge case of the copyright law, because technically they were copyrighting a number. So it was a very big number, and essentially this was a encryption key, and they wanted to copyright it, or at least which I don't understand how would that work, because I think they have to submit that this is the number that we're copyrighting, and at which point you'd reveal the secret, and then everybody can.
They actually passed a law that it wasn't even beyond copyright. It was that having the technology to decrypt that without the license was illegal. And that's what the joke about the T-shirt was. The front had the code. Like if you
can just copy and paste,
paste that into a bash script and run it, and it will work. You could decrypt a DVD, and it's like technically by the letter of
having
law,
the shirt,
that shirt was illegal. Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. But the problem was that it was such a big kind of worm, because once the decryptors start coming out and have the number in there, then people it was hard to control the DVD rippers, and that's when they start trying to do some value add, where you get the DVD with some like memorabilia in there and stuff like that, and sort of try to convince people that way. Blu-ray tried to have this scheme, which was interesting, where it was a set of keys. So there were essentially a tree of keys that could decrypt the Blu-ray, that can decrypt the Blu-ray thing. But the way that it worked was that, and this is the reason why your Blu-ray player needs internet connections from time to time, or when a new Blu-ray disc is played, is that as part of either the Blu-ray disc or as part of them communicating to Home Tower, they will look at the tree and invalidate parts of the tree. And the idea is that when somebody discovers a key, they will figure out what part of the tree could you invalidate, so that they can still have encrypted Blu-rays even up to today. So I know that they were trying to sort of like go around this what happens if one secret goes out. And I don't know, like but even that it's sort of like there's ways around it, because that essentially requires the cooperation of the Blu-ray decoder to actually say, like, I'm going to honor that the new table of keys that are still permissible are the ones that I should be using. So it's one of those where I don't know if it's protectable. Like, even if it was the most well-kept secret, one person needs to just post it out there somewhere, and then everybody can decrypt everybody else's work. So just on the technology side of it, it's like it's super, super hard to say that this could be a safe way to actually conduct business. Now, the morality of it, on the legality of it, yeah, that's big questions. There's people from left and right on that. So,
well, I mean, obviously the argument that the government uses is for wanting the back door is for surveillance, for crime and whatnot. The concern.
What is a crime?
Pardon?
What is a crime? That's the problem.
Well, and that's where a lot of the the people that understand this better go with this, is like, by giving that back door, when you have regimes that are looking to suppress certain voices, when you have China's Great Wall is a good example, right? I mean, the ability for them to spy on anything would be detrimental to them. Protests around the world have been orchestrated via WhatsApp, which is an encrypted, or not WhatsApp, is Signal. Signal's the chat thing that's encrypted, and to give governments backdoors that would prevent those kinds of movements, and that's just anti-democratic.
Yeah, no, it's the problem is it cuts both ways, right? Like on one, there is definitely the national security interest, and on the other is the right to privacy and actually just to oppose government, right? Like so yeah, and it doesn't sound like a good idea at all. Like I'll say that much. Just on the technical merits, it's a bit dicey, and then never mind adding the actual sort of like moral dilemma where this could be used as a tool for repression, for suppression. So
for the record, I found other places still printing a similar T-shirt to the one I have right now. Okay, mine's 20 years old, but
it's a Go now. Is it?
This is Pearl, the one I found.
No, move on. No, no, we're not doing anything, Pearl.
But it starts off with "I am a circumvention device forbidden by 17 USC 1201A2, which is the statute that prevents you from having that code. Do not manufacture me, import me, offer me to the public, provide me, or traffic me in any part of me. You have been warned," and then it's got the script. That actually.
Oh, that is so funny.
That reminds me of the message you saw at the beginning of all the VHS tapes that you're going to go to jail if you copy this.
Piracy is not a harmless crime. I mean, all right.
So what's up with Google getting sued again?
Well, they're not getting. They're getting sued by the government this time, right? Yeah. This is antitrust.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is fairly interesting because I think this is probably one of the biggest antitrust cases in technology since Microsoft. I mean, when you had the browser being delivered with the OS and how that was anti-competitive. Now they're talking about search, and specifically, one of the things they're targeting is collusion between the tech companies, specifically Google and Apple, where Google is paying Apple boatloads of money to make Google the default search engine. Apple is happily taking their money and doing so. But, given how many, or really how few people change their search default, being the default is a fairly significant thing. It does draw a lot of parallels to the whole idea of Microsoft embedding IE in the operating system.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, no, and now, so I mean, here we are again, with two tech companies with very, very large market share, kind of joining forces to enforce a default behavior that the government is bringing suit against Google as anti-competitive. But
two of the big reasons this really matters is, number one, between Google and Apple, you've got the absolute lion's share of the mobile market.
Yep.
So you mean I can use my Nokia Microsoft phone?
Yeah, if you take out your BlackBerry, but also
BlackBerry
browsers. This is big dollars because of search.
Yes.
You could have argued that the IDE wars, there wasn't as big of a financial impact there because it was just a piece of software that rendered HTML, right? I mean, like plugins and toolbars and that kind of thing aside, wasn't quite as impactful as this really is, because the ad revenue of Google through its search is astronomical. It funds the vast majority of their empire. And if this is taken away from them, this is going to have this would be a much bigger impact to Google than the browser wars ever were to Microsoft.
Just to put a little injection in here, I did hear on a podcast recently that Apple is working on their own search engine that they're going to possibly be using in the future. So that's just to put it out there. I don't
think that helps things. I guess my question is, where does this lawsuit go? Because people have talked about it as, hey, is Google going to get broken up? Or what do you do with this? Do you just make the partnership illegal?
Isn't this why they formed Alphabet in the first place?
I feel like it, right? So it's hey, we already got pieces.
We're already broken up. Search is that company.
Ad revenue is here.
It's the Enron business model.
Yeah, they did it proactively.
Exactly.
What happened to Do No Evil?
But yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting.
I don't know.
It's a hairy case. I mean, it's.
I do personally think that Google may be the dominant player. It doesn't, from a technical perspective, it doesn't feel like it needs to be. Like when Google came to power, there wasn't another viable option. Like Lycos versus Google was never or Yahoo.
It was not a
search.
Ask Jeeves, man. Ask Jeeves.
Whereas nowadays, like on my mobile phone, I've switched to DuckDuckGo, and I don't notice any real difference in any material difference in my search quality results.
Yeah,
I'm a creature of habit. I
default behavior, I think,
that's the problem.
Could be very, very interesting here. Is what does it say? I mean, how do you solve this? Do you roll a dice and say, well, you've got 6 search providers, one user?
Nope.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Where does this go?
So I open up my iPhone. I open up my iPhone as I'm setting all my other preferences. They present you with a window that says choose your search engine.
Sure. That happens on Windows.
That's what the solution will end up being.
Yeah.
Which is all case of purposes,
And 98% of people are going to pick Google anyways. It'll be the top one on the list.
Yeah.
Do you think that's where it'll go? Because like the Microsoft case, IE was removed in Europe, right? So I mean, when I talk about the Microsoft case, it's actually not U.S. antitrust. I'm talking about EU antitrust. So if I said U.S., I misspoke. But they actually would deliver Windows without, and you'd have to go out and download it. Could this end up killing the search bar? I mean, do you remove the search bar and you actually have to type Google.com, hit enter?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I mean, what if Apple did get rid of Google as a default search engine and you had to download the Google app? Because there is a Google app.
Sure.
There's a bunch of
you get that app and then you search, with it. So if you want to use Google, you download the app. I don't know.
I mean, like on my iPhone, I've got 3 different browsers. And they all, like Safari is actually the one I use the least on my phone, and like they all use Google or whatever. They all have a default search, so that browser bar serves as 2 purposes. It's I'm entering a URL or I'm entering a search query. And they all have a default that you go to. Ones I can change, I've switched to DuckDuckGo, and the ones I can't, suck it up and feed more data to Google. But
it's
I think it's a bigger deal, less from the end user's perspective, but more so the financial impact of Google. Like if Google loses this one, they lose their revenue stream. Like Google doesn't have a serious revenue stream otherwise.
But I think it's going to be the same thing, right? Like I think it's going to end up with what you're saying. There's going to be a decision menu when you set up your iPhone, and then it's 90% of the things are going to be back the way they were. But now people have a choice. Well, they always had. Well, I guess they didn't have a choice before. Now they have a choice.
You're prompted. You're forced. Again, there could be a couple different ways this comes out.
Yeah, and Apple creating their own search engine is probably going to be using Google.
I don't know about that. I mean, like I said, there are other viable search engines now. Like Bing isn't horrible. DuckDuckGo seems to be perfectly fine from a quality of search results perspective, and it's more private. There are other options out there that, from a search quality perspective,
I have to try them, because I remember I tried Bing a while ago, and it was so bad that it just scared me away from looking at them for a long while. But maybe I should look at them now.
I like DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, no, that's the one which I don't understand how they make money. Are they just
you and me both, man? I got no idea how they make money.
So there are links that are placed first. Somebody's paying for them.
Somebody. Actually, I just went to the website. Frequently asked question. Number 1, how does DuckDuckGo make money? We are making our money from private ads on our search engine. Okay, so they do have ads on the search engine.
They just don't track you.
Exactly. Right. There's no associate. It's purely on the results of your query as opposed to building a profile about you.
Yeah, no, and then that's one of the other things. Like I think that in today's world, the digital footprint that you have is so huge, like with so many ways. Like, yeah, search engine might not have your private information, but cookies will. And there's like the concept of the Uber cookie, and in mobile devices they were using. It was interesting. They were using the battery power indicator as a unique. With your IP address was enough of a unique identifier to figure you out on different websites. And that's why they had to do an update on the battery API for Apple to round it to the nearest 10th digit.
That reminds me of work that I know happened with the auto manufacturers to be able to determine who's driving your car. And they thought about where you're going and all kinds of complicated things. You know what the most reliable indicator was?
Car seat, like the seat position. Yeah, right. Yep. Yep. It's like, oh, that's 6'2". Bob is actually going in. You get 5'9", then you get Michael and me. All right, so we'll see how that ends up. I think we could just end up on that on this final note, just almost like, because I think there's going to be more episodes coming down the road, so maybe this could be just a little overview teaser, because it's still making news, and of course Google is such a big target, right? So Google and Oracle are having briefs. What is it? Not briefs. There are oral arguments on the Supreme Court now.
Yeah, it's there.
It's done. It's done. It has happened. Google and Oracle have argued in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. It is in the justices' hands. So we will see how that. Just curious. Ruth Bader Ginsburg heard that case.
Oh my gosh! Really?
So she's now passed. So it will. There's the potential for a there's not a practical chance, but there's a pure numbers chance that there could be a tie 4-4. Right?
Well, then it just goes down to the lower court again.
Yeah, it just means the precedent. Whatever happened last time stays.
Yeah. So I mean, did anybody else listen to it? So that
I haven't yet,
because I was actually listening to some of the arguments during the walk, and just not being a lawyer, there are certain things that clearly went over my head, but the justices seemed like they were challenging Google very strongly on some of their arguments, and then there was a lot of discussion of was there only one way to do these procedures for the Java language, and it's interesting the self-referential of Google saying, well, there was only a way to do them if we were going to do it how Java developers write their code. So it's like go ahead.
I was going to say before the arguments, just doing some research on the Supreme Court. I listened to a case that I don't even know how it ended up, but there was arguments about whether or not you could copyright a domain. The difference between, I think it wasn't hotels versus hotels.com, but it was like that kind of thing. Like, could you copyright hotels.com and prevent a myhotels.com because it's using your copyright embedded in there? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how that case ended up, but just listening to the arguments and the questions the justices were asking, and then reading the articles about what happened here, it sounded like a similar thing, which was they're looking for an analogy. They're looking for some way of help me relate to this. And everything I read about what happened with the Oracle and Google thing was that they were struggling to find an analogy for Oracle's side. Bob, you listened to the argument.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I felt like they had I felt the opposite. They had trouble finding an analogy for Google's side.
That's what I said. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah, no. So they were really struggling to put the concepts together because, they were talking through writing, I think a cookbook, I think was one analogy that came up. Whether, hey, if you're able to copyright, how the fact that you have a first or a second and a third course, and whether that should be copyrightable or whether it's how do I deliver the meal. So they did go to some analogies in other industries to try to convey that to the justices. But you could tell once they got into the details and the doctrine and a lot of the stuff that I don't know the details of, they talked about a merger doctrine. And a lot of that was based on statutes and precedents set in other cases. But it did seem like Google was struggling very hard to articulate their point in a way that justices could understand. There were some really good questions asked by the justices. I mean, some of them addressed the amicus briefs that were submitted by a number of companies, Google, Apple, that had all said, well, if you rule that, APIs are copyrightable, there's going to be this industry outline. And one of the justices, I think it was Roberts, was asked, well, if this ruling was so detrimental, it's been over a year.
Yeah.
It's been over a year. The sky is not falling. Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's just some of those very pointed questions towards the Google attorneys just did not give me a good vibe.
To the Roberts point, though, and obviously I know we're coming up on time, but to the Roberts point, large companies build up large software patent portfolios not to attack each other. It's defensive. It's simply because a lot of these patents are complete bullshit. Everybody knows it. But if you sue me over my bullshit patents, I'm going to sue you over your bullshit patents. I wonder if Roberts might be onto something in that your APIs are copyrightable, so are mine. We both know we've used each other's. You really want to go down this route?
You want to Mexican standoff?
But that's how patent portfolios work in the software industry. That's the whole reason companies buy up other companies purely for their patent portfolio for that reason. It is a defensive position. I'm wondering if there's an angle here with the copyrights in the same situation where it's like, I've got this copyright. We all know we use each other's APIs. It's the whole way software works, so people understand it. I'm wondering if that same scenario wouldn't play out. I'm purely thinking out loud here. I'm trying to.
I can't. So just from listening to the arguments, it didn't seem to come up that, hey, Google had any sort of copyrights that Oracle was using and we're going to now countersue. I mean, that wasn't the arguments that was being made. Now whether that could happen or not, I mean, sure. They bought Motorola. I mean, a lot of that was put in place to find mobile phone patents and hardware patents to help protect certain positions there. So I don't doubt that is a position that these large companies are taking. But from the context of the copyrightable APIs and the Java case that they had, there was a very big focus on, there was only one way to do it for the developers, and a lot of the justices were, so that the part where they were savvy is kind of pointing out that, well, Apple went ahead and created an entire language for their application developers to use. I mean, essentially, you have Swift out there that you have these Apple developers doing. They obviously found a way around, writing original code. Why did you have to copy Java? So, I mean, pointed things like that did seem to make it as if it wasn't. Now, it doesn't sound like, hey, they're ruling that APIs are copyrightable, but that is kind of where things are standing. Feels like it may be standing because they are still arguing, well, you went out and copied all of this. You could have written original code. You're telling me that the argument went in a different direction. It's like, why are you telling me that there's only one way to do it when there's other companies that clearly found another way to do it? Right. So it's, I guess we'll find out. I mean, they're saying the rulings, and we can keep talking about it. They're saying the rulings probably won't come out till summer-ish time of next year. So it's still a while till we find out where this goes. But,
it is interesting because just like thinking about like Michael's point, every time I write code, the bar is very low that I am going to be infringing somebody else's patent. I mean, not that it doesn't happen or it couldn't happen. It's just that one never crosses my mind. Like, oh, I am reinventing a new way to, I don't know, serialize things, right? And somebody has a clunky patent there somewhere, right? Implementing an API, the bar is so low that I might be doing that multiple times throughout the day just because, I need an interface for, a shape object because everybody loves shape objects and I need a circle. And it like to your point, Michael, I think that the problem is that the API bar gets so low that then it becomes highly intimidating. If that were the solution, right? It's the same as nuclear. It's almost like, I guess it's like MAD is sort of like mad deterrence, right? Like I have a nuclear weapon, you have a nuclear weapon, we can throw each other nuclear weapons. This is more of like I have a gun. Getting you is super easy. Like I don't need to like there is almost nothing that can prevent me from not getting to you if I really wanted to. Versus nuclear deterrence.
But the point though is that you're right. You've got a gun, but so do I. And so
I don't have any guns as a developer.
Well, no, but what the analogy you're using is like, it's not nuke. We don't have nukes, but we have the equivalent weapons on either side. Is what is the point? Is like so. Because we both have the equivalent weapons on either side, nobody pulls the trigger, and that's how patents and software works these days. Patents and software works that everybody's got a patent portfolio, and everybody's got something that the other guy has infringed on. Everybody knows it, and so we're not gonna pull the trigger. We're not gonna nuke each other. And so I could see the argument that Roberts was making that like the world hasn't ended. Yeah, because partially I think part of it's just been in a holding pattern. I don't think anyone was ready to take up that charge. Bullet. Right. You
don't see a lot of copyright. Well, I guess you don't see a lot of copyright submissions to.
Well, they don't need to be. They don't need to be submitted. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, copyright doesn't. Patent requires you to submit something. Copyright you get
it's the first,
when you write
published.
it.
So actually,
but the problem is
GitHub actually it presents a really convenient way of managing copyright because you can reference when it was pushed to GitHub.
Yeah.
You're right. You can I published it first. It's mine. Like that's all you need for a copyright.
Yeah, but how can you prove that but there's a lot of APIs before GitHub, right?
There are, and the whole prior art thing, it gets really difficult.
I don't know. I mean, it will be very interesting. I think that a lot of it will be like there'll be punches thrown, and there'll be some licking. But oh Lord, it will be an interesting take from the industry. We'll see summer. We'll see. I don't know if the composition of the court has any influence. Like I know that sometimes we say conservative versus liberal. I don't know if that necessarily plays into role in this type of decision.
It didn't seem to, just listening to them. I mean, so they were getting kind of, beat up from all sides. I mean, it didn't seem like any of the quote unquote liberal parties in the court were, pitching too hard for Google. I think that the easiest one was Byers on them. He was kind of almost helping them with their argument when you listen to it, but you listen to Kagan and Sotomayor, and they were also both very pointed in the criticism of, some of the analogies that were presented. It's like, well, you did copy a bunch of stuff from them. You seem to be claiming, hey, it would have been really expensive for us to do it. You're telling us there's only one way to do it. And yet there's examples of companies that did spend a lot of money and did find another way to do it. So your argument is not working out here. So I guess we'll see. I mean, my hope is it does seem like the justices were aware of the amicus briefs. So, I mean, they were mentioned several times during the hearings. So, I mean, the hope maybe for a narrow ruling rather than a kind of a more ham-fisted APIs are copyrightable, end of story. It's probably going to be, well, because of how this happened and how this went down, this specific case, yes, we're going. I mean, again, I'm completely speculating. There is no, indication that it's definitely going that way. It's just the tone in the room. Google felt like they're kind of on their heels.
Mm.
Well, I assume we'll include a link to the recording.
Yes, yeah. The recordings are all available, so you can listen to the whole thing.
And there's
if you want to, but it's it's really interesting. It's definitely not the type of environment that I thought the Supreme Court would be like. And again, the arguments that were being made were very different than the arguments that we've talked about on the show, because a lot of it focuses on statutes and precedents and things that we haven't covered. So I learned a lot.
You mean the lawyers talked about the lawyer stuff?
Yeah, they did.
Lawyering. All right. Well, I think we are to probably the end of the episode. Like every episode, we have too much fun doing things, or talking about things and geeking out, right? So, but this is going to be interesting, and of course, we'll be there when the Supreme Court does it. I know that we're probably 1 or 2 episodes away from doing our yearly predictions of what's going to happen next year. Mm-hmm. So that'll be kind of like a fun one, and we recap the things that we missed this year. So it'll be
probably quite a bit.
Yeah. We thought we'll be presenting more conferences.
Saw anything out of this.
Yeah. 2020, the year of everything went wrong. Exceptional.
2021 will be better.
All right. So that's it. This is Freddie signing off.
Bob signing off.
Josh signing off.
Michael signing off. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at OffHeap.
Yep. And check out all the other podcasts that we have. You just have to go to offheap.com and you can see all the sister podcasts we have. All right, everyone. Take care. Stay safe. 6 feet apart. Wear a mask if you go out. And healthy.
Yep.
All right.
Stopping recording.